Hey everyone, we have Bryan back for a shadow interview. How's it going, man?
Hey, good. How are you doing, Benjamin?
Doing good, yeah. So we can just jump right into it if you're down.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So you have a few twin types. We've seen some of them in the past. Are you guys still hanging out, by the way?
Yeah, I'm actually going to talk to Josh tomorrow. Actually,
Oh, cool.
so yeah,
Yeah. Josh actually says a lot of good things about you, just so you know.
yeah. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah,
Um, I guess your first function, feminine NI. Um, it shadows to
masculine and I.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
You're double feminine.
yeah.
So masculine and it shadows to any. I'm gonna ask you some questions, how
Cool.
you maybe experience any, how you use it. So, do you find that you gather concepts? Do you do that ever?
No, I put some thought into this beforehand because I
Okay.
watched a little bit of your Dave interview and I watched
Right.
other shadow interviews and I'm like, okay, what's the format? Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
prepare. But so no, I know that I don't. I used to think for many years that I was an INTP. And then when I became more self-aware of how extroverted I really was, I switched over to ENTP as a kind of self-type. And then this was right before the OP typing. So I had submitted myself as a consume, play, blast, sleep, like an NETI and like an audio. So,
Wow. Okay.
and they told me, Dave especially told me he was like, oh, of course you think you're any. It's like, just that double activated play with SETE, double feminine. It's he's like, look, it's very any like, but you don't have TI, man, like not at all. And so they had to break that down for me. But so I spent a lot of years in the reading the Jungian literature and everything, and just getting into the Jungian typology community and diving into those functions. But it turns out that I just romantically idealized. I love NETI. I think it's awesome.
Hmm.
But I had to realize after post typing, because it's now 11 months post typing almost. Yeah. And it was just I use any in service of NI if I use it at all, right? If like for me, the way I see it is like, because I experience it every day with my wife, because she's her type is she got OP types and she's a type twin to Kristen Leo. So that's a visual TESI blast play sleep consume. So she's got masculine NE
Right.
and masculine TE. So I experience a lot of that double masculine play. And I see her use NE, becomes very obvious that I'm not using it. So she's gathering in different patterns and concepts that I've got a sniper scope and she's got a radar. So
What about in terms of seeing like the whole spectrum of intuition? This maybe it being non-personal, being not attached to the intuition.
I do that I evaluate a lot of, let's say, like when she does that better than I do. Again, for her, it's a demon, but I get to see it and see if I do it. For her, I like to evaluate ideas and connections. It's like that works impersonally for me. Like I don't really, what's more personal to me is just what I see my path of life being, but I don't see myself as overly attached to specific patterns or connections. It's just like, it's not,
Right.
maybe I'm just not that aware of it, but it's not.
Because okay, so your tendency would be to narrow down
Right.
things, right?
Right. So I look at them
And
all that narrow them
yeah,
down.
and
Salty.
any is gonna look at the spectrum.
Right.
Narrowing down is not what it wants to do. It wants to see the broadness of things.
Right. And I don't find that very interesting, like to go all the way broad. Like I love hearing any people talk, any TIs,
Right.
any FIs. It's really cool stuff. It's really fun. But then it gets to a point where the looking at the spectrum of possibilities and seeing everything, it just kind of, they all start feeling the same to me. And I want to narrow it down to, okay, this all sounds like this one. Okay, cool. I get your point now and let's
Mhm.
move on. I don't want to infinitely explore every nuance of the
No,
same
because
thing.
I guess also they can hold two patterns at once as well. Like
Yeah.
they have no problem going down one. Like they don't need to go down one tunnel. They can have both and be like, yeah, it could be this or this.
Yeah.
Let's keep them both. It could be both at the same time.
Yeah, I'm cringing because, like, again, it's a daily thing for me. When
Right.
I tell my wife about a pattern that I think I see, and then she's like, "Well, yeah, I can see where you think that's true, or I see where you're going, but really, no, it's this and it's this too, and you missed that, and you're like, so with the one I think is the most likely to happen, especially when it comes to predictions. That's kind of how I experience it. We're
Right.
both, I like doing stock investing, and my wife, helps me out with that, and it's really nice to have that masculine NE, masculine NI combo to kind of cover each
Right.
other's backs because she's really good at seeing the short-term range of possibilities, something within like the next 6 to 12
Yeah.
months.
Or maybe
Really
what
good at
could come up like really suddenly, all of a sudden.
right, right. So she's peeking around those corners very easily. Whereas my predictions or things that I think are likely to happen are, I have a much better track record with the 5 to 10 year stuff, but anything before that is just crap.
You're filtering out also a lot of possibilities because they're not likely.
Right,
Um,
right,
yeah.
right. Like I got into, now I like to see any as like, as looking at looking at the range of possibilities, but also I like it. I like thinking of it in terms of like even quantifying the possibilities, like probabilities, basically, and just looking at all the range of outcomes, kind of like a Monte Carlo simulation.
Hmm.
And I really got into that because of investing and because I'm in risk management at work. So I really got into that, and it helped me a lot with not is getting away from the delusion of trying to be 100% certain because I want to be 100%
Yeah.
certain about everything. And I've realized I did a little experiment recently. It was like a couple months ago. So I spent 2 weeks just writing down all of my actual 100% certain things I thought would happen. Let's say it was something at work or, oh, this is going to go badly or whatever. And 100% of the time I was wrong. So, and that hurt because I'm like, but I was so convinced I was going to be right. And I was
And
wrong.
Annie's okay being uncertain. They're okay
Right,
not being.
right.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm not. So I needed to dive into for years, dive into probabilities and like I read like two big books for that for me were like How to Measure Anything by Doug Hubbard and The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. So those helped me put in my box, hey, anything more than 90 to 95% certainty, you're just going to fall off a cliff. So don't do that. Always hedge for the 5 to 10% you're not seeing, and that helps me be more comfortable. And it's actually turned out really well for. It turns out well for me because it reduces the anxiety of not being able to see that. Because again, on the daily, I'm always shown how I'm not seeing something, and she doesn't do it on purpose. As far as like, oh, you're wrong. It's more like, oh man, okay, I
She'll
didn't
take
think.
it really personally too if you've gone so deep on something and it's just not.
Yeah, yeah. So you're right. To reverse what I said earlier, it's like, yeah, I do. I don't like to think that I take it personally, but when it shows that I'm off track, then it's like, oh man, it really it's a deep cut. It just sucks.
Yeah.
It just sucks. But I keep trying because I keep trying to get better at it, and now I know not to trust anything I'm 100% certain about because I know I'm on the wrong track. How could I be wrong? Is something that I've learned to kind of ask myself and hedge for those bets, hedge my bets. And it works out.
Yeah.
It works out a lot.
And even though probably like if you're certain on everything, you're probably right maybe 90% of the time, but then there's still that 10% that like you didn't see coming.
Oh yeah, and it happens a lot, and even especially in little things. If you do it in the little things, it'll add up to like the big things. Like again, for me, like especially with investing for ourselves, for like our financial future and everything, it's like you can't mess around with that stuff. Like the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett, so it's like he likes to say rule number one is don't lose money, and rule number two is don't forget rule number one. So I don't like losing money, so I don't want to lose. And I don't want to play around with our future because that is very personal to me. It's like I do want this outcome to happen, to get better wealth and everything, and to maybe help my family and all that stuff. But I can't mess with that. I can't let my own it's more than a desire. It's just like a.
So okay, so Annie is also taking things a lot at face value. Like they're not trying to manipulate the intuition. They're trying to just leave it as it is. And it's kind of for them. It's kind of like perverting the intuition by like narrowing it down, I guess. So
Yeah.
Are you ever comfortable just leaving it as is?
No.
No.
You
need to narrow it down.
I do, and I have to manipulate. Was a great word. Manipulate. I have to manipulate it because the probabilities are there for me in service of whatever outcome I'm trying to achieve.
Right.
So
you make it personal too that way. You make it apply to yourself and your own life and your own family and
right.
And yeah, Annie will do less of that, less make it personal.
Yeah, like it's totally not personal to her. She's not attached to any of her conclusions, anything she feels certain about. And she's leading with that SI. So
Right.
all of her stuff is really grounded. So she's not willing necessarily. I see that huge difference every day. She's not willing to make long term bets and
Right.
stand on that. She's going to stand on, okay, I'm
Right. Because
super
there's just so many possible things that could change
She
and
says that.
alter, and
Yeah.
so there's no way, there's no viable way to go too far down one path. Yeah.
No, yeah, but there's pros and cons though, right? Like,
Yeah.
David Shannon always making fun of NI. I mean, you could point out a million ways NI goes bad, right? But
Right.
at least as far as pros, I've had to learn to see this is like you and I saw it by comparison. Like, while she's not willing to make long-term bets, there's a lot of people that aren't willing to like stick to a long-term plan or bet or anything like that. Sometimes you just need pure, almost faith, to be honest. You just need faith in a long-term plan that you're going to get there. And that's all you got. You can't prove it with sensory. You just have to believe, and you do eventually get there because you're making it happen. You're playing a role in making that happen. So that's a nice strength to have.
Yeah. I guess the other axis isn't really making it happen as much.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's more like evaluating it and just kind of, whatever, anything could happen, and then,
the other thing is NI is good at taking larger steps, whereas the SINE is good at taking tinier steps, but they'll do so many of those steps, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I like thinking of us as like a power combo. Like she mines the ST because she's got the ST blast, but that SINE, she's always looking in the short term and building that up.
Unless the SI has a long process. Like SI can have huge chunks of things, and then it's a lot less to deal with. They can just take the this long period of procedure and then connect it to another long period of procedure, and it's just that little connection they have to worry about.
I got you. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, because she does that a lot with practical everyday, and even with she's got feminine SI, so she doesn't spend too much effort, and she's energy dominant, so she really doesn't spend a lot of effort trying to stack up procedures, and she doesn't like anything that's way too procedural. It doesn't she's just not going to spend the energy on it. But the way she tackles problems or anything long term or any problem is that she'll break it down into really small, easy steps that she can accomplish to, of course, save energy and to get it done. So she's really good at the sequential stuff, whereas me, I just want to jump ahead or go this way, and maybe I'll skip 5 steps, but then fall back 7, and then skip over to 9. But it works out. It's a good balance for both of us.
What about in terms of being aware of? Okay, so the spectrum of possibilities is seeing all of the positive ones and the negative ones. Just everything that could happen, and so I don't know. Do you try to track what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen? What?
Not naturally. No. It's by habit. So again, I guess
the SENI is making it happen. Like, you don't care about what the worst thing is because you're not going to let that happen. You're crafting it.
Right. I do care in so much as I want to see it and be able to reduce the risk of that happening or the probability of that happening. So again, I always look at it as probabilities. So if I'm scanning for different possibilities or the range of possibilities, it's because I'm looking for ways I can get taken out. And quantifying them as much as I can and saying, okay, well, the odds of that is maybe 50-50. I shouldn't worry about that too much. Or, that's a 90%. If I go that way, that's going to be bad. This will be great. I tend towards the negative personally. So it's harder for me to focus on the positive outcomes.
Oh, wow.
I'm always looking out for the negative ones because and maybe that's the influence of NI.
Yeah, I found that NE tries to stay away from that because if they look at it, it happens. I don't know.
Oh, really? Wow. Wow. I didn't know that because for her, for my wife, she's very good at looking at the negatives. That's pretty much all she pays attention to. Maybe that's because of, probably because of, let's say, being a control kind of savior, OI savior. It's just, you're looking for things that are going to mess up your certainty. So, So she uses that to kind of be like, okay, can this go wrong? And she'll point out things that I just don't even see.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's useful. Yeah. How can it go wrong? But then also getting stressed out and too overworked up on what can go wrong will cause it to go wrong sometimes.
Right. Yeah, right. And that does happen. And I have to, and there's a lot of things I do at work that I just freak out about just because I'm afraid they'll go wrong. Because again, I don't want the chaos. They almost never do. Again, it
Right.
never happens. But especially for like presentations or doing an interview or something like that, it's just like, oh my God, is everything going to be okay? But I'm never looking, almost never looking at, well, how can it go right? What are the odds of it going right? And I don't see that most of the time.
Because going right requires action for you. Like it requires you to push it there.
Yeah.
So like that's the goal. What goes right is what you want to be, and then you see what's wrong and how do you shift it? How do you shift the probabilities to go towards the right?
I would even say that how it goes, it going right is what I assume will happen anyway. So I know that it's almost like I'm so, in a sense, in a weird sense, maybe I'm so positive that it'll happen that it becomes a blind spot in the sense that I just don't even care anymore. It's like, oh yeah, I already assume it's going to happen anyway. How's it going to go wrong so that the thing I really want to happen happens?
Yeah.
So
I have a question here. Do you always quantify in terms of probability, or are you aware of the actual factors that can alter those probabilities?
I don't always quantify in terms of probability. Again, that's something that I have to like stretch myself to actually.
Learning, yeah.
So I'm learning to do that, and I've tried to do it for years. It's not, again, being an intuitive savior, it's not fun to get into the sensory, actually look up the data. What is the actual probability? What data is out there? That's not fun to do. But it's incredibly instructive. Now, as far as am I aware of the factors? Oh yeah, totally. Because if I want to be able to, and again, through training, I've learned that it's like, if you want to say, hey, there's a 60% chance that this will happen. Okay, well, what are the factors that are actually influence at 60%? It's like, it's not enough to just give a number. It's like, you need to really break down and know what's going on there. So
that way you can see it coming. Because if you see the factors and you're watching the factors, tracking the factors, then you can get a premonition of it actually affecting the outcome.
You got it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay, really cool. Do you have anything else on any maybe that you maybe use that?
On any, let me see. I took some notes. Let me see if I have any. Let's see. I covered everything.
Cool.
I mean, I just love. I mean, for positive stuff about any, I just love the comedy and the goofiness and all the crazy random stuff that they could come up with. So I like that. But now I'm not very funny. So my wife is funnier than I am, and my brother's very funny, but I don't think he's any. But yeah, I do.
Because they could see the absurd. They see the absurd, and they can just point at the absurd,
And how they combine it together is just so funny. Like, and it really is true. At least just my subjective, the pun-based humor. They love puns. I don't know what it is about Annies and puns.
I think it's more the SI, yeah.
It's awful. It hurts, man. Let's another question.
He's continuing his last question.
Sure. So you start with the number, then identify the factors back from that. Yeah. So there will be this goes into a lot of times it's really hard to find hard numbers on a probability of something happening because there's so many factors.
It's just estimating, anyways. It's just
exactly. It's estimation, and the How to Measure Anything book is a really great book if you want to get into that as far as how to make good calibrated subjective estimates, and then with the data you have, and kind of get into a good confidence interval. So you want to be at around 90-95%.
What about in terms of dancing with your intuition in the moment? Just I can get stuck on one box, on one theme or whatever. What about in terms of shifting that, jumping to this concept and jumping to that, dancing around with it?
I'm okay with it, and especially in conversation. So talking with my wife or talking with any in my conversations was Jason, for example. So Jason, or no, it wasn't Jason. Well, let's go with my wife. So she'll bounce from idea to idea. It's all kinds of point. No point at all. It's just, wait, where'd you get that from? How'd you get there? And
why are you getting there? That's more of the question.
Right. I can't even see it. I'm just wait, how do I?
They're not going anywhere specific. They're just going to the natural progression of things.
That connects
to this.
it's just, oh my God, it comes out of nowhere. It really does feel like it just comes out of your blind spots all the
Well, that's
time.
what it is. It comes out of nowhere. It comes out of the moment.
It is,
Well,
yeah. It's you
yeah.
can, I'm just like, it just comes out of nowhere, and I just never see it coming. But when I do get stuck on a path, so it's taking it seriously is the hardest thing. Like especially when it's something that it came out of nowhere and it is true and it is going to happen, but I don't want to see it happening. It's more like I'm stuck on, hey, this is the way it's going to go, and it's hard to move the NI towards that pattern.
Because also you want to, once they have a pattern, you want to keep going deeper on that pattern. You don't want to move to a new one.
Oh no, yeah. It's like I already worked on this one. Why am I moving to another one now? It's
right.
like,
and like, oh, we just started talking about this. There's so much more to unpack here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then stop.
And then they just shift to something else, and you're like, but let's bring it back to like, do you ever feel yourself bringing the conversation back to where it started? Or
yes, yeah. all the time. I do that. Anybody with like, whenever I talk to a consume, especially just the channel switching, I'll always like, I keep a mental note of, okay, where did I want to expand on? And I'll just go right back to that.
Right. What were we talking about? What were we
right.
going to start talking about? Yeah.
I do that. Yeah. We'll go on conversations for like 2 hours. And then there was a point, an hour and a half, like, a half hour in that I want to go back to and expand on. And she'll be like, oh God, I forgot about that. So
yes. Yeah.
They're so really fun to talk to, NEs. It's but keeping track, I've had a lot of practice, but it's hard. It's hard.
Okay, so then your next function's TE. So the shadow of that's the TI. Do you TI sometimes? Do you logic on your own?
I do, and I wish I was more comfortable with it. Before this, when I asked, hey, yeah, I need the feedback. Like it's like I'm in a position right now at work. I just got a new job like 2 or 3 months ago. It was just a different department, and it relies on me having to go on my own logic because I don't have other tribe members to check my logic with to make sure I'm doing it. And it's really difficult to resist the feeling, or just to not feel like I'm doing it wrong, or that my logic is weird unless I check some other resource. It could be an actual person. It could be a book on the subject. It could be some article somewhere on the internet, something. Like it's almost, it's ridiculous how much I'll stop on a logic train and say, okay, maybe I've gone a little too deep here. What does somebody else say about this? Am I on the right track? So it's very difficult.
So you need to check an objective source. You can't just go too deep. You feel awkward going too deep.
I do. It feels extremely awkward. And I wish, and the thing is, it's not that my logic, my introverted logic is bad, not all the time necessarily. It's more that it just feels so uncomfortable, and that I don't give myself the credit because I'm not standing on that, that simulated DI to be like, hey, yeah, it'll be fine. And the thing is odds are, if I look back in the past, there are a lot of leaps of introverted logic that I have to make every day, all the time. And especially in different choices I've made at work or in my career and stuff, I had no basis to go off of on that. I just had to decide, okay, this makes sense for me and this is going to work for me. So I think it makes sense. Let's go. And then it works out. But that shit gets chucked out of memory, by just moving on to something else.
What about in terms of building yourself up a logical framework or worldview? A logical worldview.
Yeah, I would say, let me see, because I'm checking myself to see how much of that is fueled by FI instead of TI. I do
also maybe TE into NI.
Right, TE and NI. So I subjectively feel like I do, let's say, go deep enough. Like I do like going really in depth in certain topics and stuff like that. But how much of that is NI versus versus, I can't say that it's TI because I know I don't have the function, but it's, and again, it's building a worldview by checking a lot of sources and then saying, okay,
the objective side. Yeah.
What is everybody else saying? Are there commonalities? What are the nuances? Right. Oh, hey, like say, for example, when I ran across like your theory, your cognitive theory, it was fantastic. I was like, man, whoa. Like for me, I would not have been comfortable going all the way down. And obviously I do have I guess you could call them my TI theories, but do I share them? No, because I'm not super confident on them. Which is why, let's say I asked you, it's like, hey, I wanted to check my logic with you on this one. Am I on the right track here? somebody who's actually confident following it all the way down the rabbit hole. So it's very tough. It's very tough.
What about in terms of fighting? Like if everyone disagrees on the logic on something, will you ever fight for that logic? Will you ever think that, okay, I'm right because I've checked my math? Like,
yes, I have to. Yeah, at work, like that work puts me into pressure for that. Normally I wouldn't, not because feminine TE, I'm going to want to like, hey, let's all get along. But at some point,
okay,
make a judgment call and just say, okay, this logic makes sense. This is what makes sense. We have to do. I have been in that position where I was running a pretty high profile project. And if it went wrong, it was big damage. It was an IT project. And I had to just go with a direction and say, okay, this makes sense. This is our logic for now. This is what we have. Let's just go. And, and we all just.
What about something that works? Do you ever ask yourself why it works? What are the principles that make it work?
That I do a lot. So that I'm always highly interested in. Mainly because whatever I'm into, it's not enough for me to simply NITE, just get the gist and then get the hell out of there, right? Because remember, at least in my head, I thought I was a TI for like literally 7 years. So for me, I got into my head and it's in my box, my NI box, to dive deep and figure out why something works the way it does. What are the principles underlying it so I can rely on it? So it's not, and I feel actually, funny enough, in reverse, like I feel bad in a kind of, it's almost like what's the word? Sleazy, I guess, to just take a little tip and then run away with it. It just feels like I cheated. So for me, it's kind of become part of my ego, or just part of like just how I see myself and my self-image, to dive as deep as I can. Again, it's driven by FI interest. So there's that too. But when it's really important, it's like, hey, you got to really figure out how this works. It's not enough to simply, I always hear that almost like a voice come back to me and say, do you really know how this actually works? Like really, and then I dive into it.
Okay, so let's say you figured out the logic behind why something works, like the truth behind it. Will you be able to apply that somewhere else? Will you ever do that?
Yes. So actually, I do that too much. So when I figure out something that works, like, and actually my wife tells me that a lot. I was like, hey, this actually, this is really, I figured out why this works or whatever. And then I'll try to over apply that framework everywhere, even where it doesn't belong. So I'll over NI the hell out of that on everything.
NIing it. You're putting everything in. You've turned that framework into some NI box. And you're trying to put everything in that NI box.
Right. So I'm guilty of that. So
okay, so I know what I'm doing. Like I know that there are things that are similar, but then there's nuances, there's differences, and like one little change in the lower logic will affect the outcome of everything, sort of thing.
Right. And I do like that about like just TI systems in general, just going down there. Like I do like the nuances and I like exploring that. But there is a limit though. Like obviously I don't have TI. So there's a limit of like, sometimes the nuances are really just not, for me, just not all that interesting. So it's like, sometimes they're just really the same to me. And it's, I'll have to jump out because I'm like,
TI
okay.
also likes to do things quick. Like you want to figure stuff out fast. TI wants to take time and care building it up piece by piece, because once you've figured it out, if you've done it wrong, you're just going to keep applying it over and over again, that logic. And it'll be wrong.
Yeah, and I wish that I had more of that patience. So like, just I really appreciate that.
Being meticulous.
Yeah, it's being very meticulous.
All the introverted functions are fine-tuning more as well.
I really wish I had that. Like, it's just like, again, that's, as far as like fantasy functions, I wish I had any in TI. I wish I had those too, because it'd be easier for a lot of things. But especially TI. TI is really cool. Like now, there's pros and cons, right? Like with all the
there's lots of cons to TI. Don't worry about that.
It's like oil exploration. It's like when you strike gold, oh my God, you win. But when you dig wrong, whoa, you just. So I wish I had more meticulousness in my life, and I try, but it's really, really hard.
What about it? Do you ever just do you take the approach sometimes that's good enough, that works enough, we don't have to make it even like super accurate, super precise, it's good enough?
I wish I did. So my problem, what I end up doing, and again, I don't know, because I've thought a lot about this lately. It's like, I don't know if that's just because in my head, and I saw the question. I'll get the question in a sec. in my head, I built up this idea that I had, I was an ITP, I had the TISI thing going on. So for me, like actually my wife's got to tell me, hey, it's good enough. Just let it go. Right. Like I'll you know, I'll just be so precise about something that doesn't matter. And I'll just keep diving in. And then I realized, oh, I could have just done this to like, I don't know, 80%, 70%, it would have been good enough. So I have a hard time with that. Good enough, moving on. That I have a really hard time with. Like, it just feels bad to do that.
For about something that works and you don't know why it works, can you just let it go and just let it work?
Yeah, sometimes. Again, like you can tell by the, like, I don't like that. Like, I never wanted to be that. I didn't want to be the INTJ, years ago. So I hated that kind of douchey kind of whatever works. I don't know why it works. Anyways, moving on. Like, it just really bothers me. I don't like having that image of myself. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I know that's counter to what you usually find, but I don't like it and I struggle with it. Like, I'm not just telling you this on an interview just because I really do struggle with that. Like, maybe it's NI perfectionism. Maybe there's a lot of that in there, but I've just got this image of precision is the way to go. And don't be, got a lot of social conditioning from growing up. It was like, the lazy work double, my mom always used to say. So like, don't be lazy. Actually do the work, do a quality job. Don't just skip over stuff. So I didn't really get to build up a lot of that success with just doing something real quick and then getting the hell out of there. That's just not how it works for me. Let's see. Do you have any examples of in what ways something works for you in those sorts of moments? Let's see. Yeah. So at work, for example, because work is where I try out a lot of my ideas and everything. So at work, much to my, discomfort with, again, I don't like going too far down in my own logic, but I'll make up ways to do things that others haven't figured out. I'll be like, okay, hey, I think this is the right way to code this script this way, or to write this document, or to explain this particular concept, or show this. And I'll just go with that and not feel confident at all that it's the right way to go, but I'll have to put it forward because of time and deadlines. So it forces me to just be like, whatever, just be confident enough. Let's go. You did the best you could. And then it turns out to be great. And you would think that's build more confidence over time to just stand in my own logic and be like, hey, this works for me. Just keep doing it. But I'll want to just jump out and be like, yeah, it works for me, but how do I really know it really works for me? I want it to work for everybody. So it works for me, great.
Oh, okay.
I want it to
work for everybody.
So I can't stand on it just works for me, because then it just feels too idiosyncratic. It's just like, okay, that's weird. Anyway, what works for everybody?
I think it's, it ends up really convoluted. Like, I guess TI, we think that once I figure it out and it's right, everyone will love it. It's perfect. And it's like, well, it's just too complicated.
Yeah.
Just make it more simple so that everyone can have access to it.
And I end up playing that role for a lot of my TI colleagues. So I love hanging out with TIs, and it's just, I've always played the role of I play the role of the TE, of course, and I'll say, hey, let's simplify that for your managers and for everybody else. They're not going to get it. Let's bring that up a couple levels. And then
so you're aware of the spectrum of what people get, of what
do they understand?
You're accountable. You're responsible to that more than to, right.
More than to making.
Even though it works better in this way, it doesn't work for everybody.
And I end up trying to promote the TIs I work with and saying, hey, let me help you get more traction on this, because it actually, when I look at it, it actually is brilliant and it is the right solution, but oh my God, so complicated. No one's going to understand it. So, okay, how can I try to dumb it down for myself? So I'll work with them and have them, okay, teach me how this works. And then I can say, okay, let me build a quick anti-blast lesson to quickly explain.
That's really interesting. Because, okay, so I was coding, I had a TE boss for a while, and he wouldn't care about my code until it worked. Once it works, he's like, okay, how did you get that to work? Let's figure it out now. Like, he needs that. Like, I would be going on the logic. He's like, I don't care about your logic. I don't care what you're doing until you've shown me.
Guilty.
Right.
Guilty. Yeah. Very guilty. Very guilty. Yeah. Yeah. When it works, I'm like, how does that work? I'll go with you on that. Yeah, God. Yeah, I can think of someone I talk with every week. He's a good friend of mine, and oh my God, it's just some weeks he'll just be on this track. I'm like, wow, why does this matter? Okay, this is some interesting logic you got going on here, just for intellectual sake, but
Right.
and it's usually something code related, and I'm like, but okay, does it work though? Is it like you figured out how to make this thing work? It's really cool. Again, really cool in and of itself because I know how to. It's like
Yeah.
it's like this is cool, but I'm just like, oh boy, okay, that may not get traction, but when he hits something, man, I do my best to try to push it out there because most people are not going to understand, which you're obviously aware of. They're just not. So I'm like, okay, how can I package this in a way? Like, how can I show the TE benefit for everyone of this complicated logic chain that's been put together in this product or this way of doing things?
Right.
And then how can we scale it or make it simpler to scale it around to everybody to make it work for everyone?
Yeah. Yeah, you're just more accountable to the spectrum. You're more accountable to what everyone will get.
Yeah. But I really do appreciate the TIs because you need somebody to dive in and really just for the sake of it, just, hey, let me try to make this work, and I try to do that for myself. It's tough. Like I just won't go all the way most of the time, but that's kind of like an illusion of my own, in a sense, my own mentality, because it's like, if I look around, even just for a second, there are a lot of little idiosyncratic things, little TI things that I do that just work for me everywhere. And I've got this complicated chain of stuff that just works for me. And I don't like, I'm just blind to it. Like I don't see it as, oh, that works for me. That wouldn't work for everybody else. Oh, that just works just for me. That wouldn't work for everybody else. It's a million things like that. And everybody does that, I'm sure. But yeah, I just don't.
In terms of trying to discover the underlying truth in things, in the world,
I'm interested in that, but is my ego attached to it? Is my identity attached to it?
Right.
Not really. No. Like I do want to. I do care about truth with a capital T. Like I do want to. I feel like I have simpatico with that. Like I do understand the quest for that, but it's not what drives my life.
Right.
If I were to be honest, it's not my driving.
It's more like just a cute thing that can show up sometimes. Oh, that's true.
More than that. It's like it's not just cute, it's more like, oh wow, yeah, geez, okay, that's really true. Holy crap. Okay. All right. And then that's where it ends. It's just like, they really figured something out there. Okay, how can I use that in my life? And I'm like, cool.
How can I use it right away to the applicability?
Right.
How can you scale it?
Right. How can I scale it? Or at the very least, how can I apply it to my own life and use it?
Right.
To be like, how can I get some benefit out of it? So it's always used for TE utility. So
right. So like from my ego, that feels like a perversion of it. Like try to apply it, like distorting it to make it work. Whereas like the truth needs to remain pure and true. Like it is what it is. Don't try to just mold it to something else, Right.
And I know that like just TI is sensitive to that. So I try, I like to think anyway, that I try to be as pure to that truth as possible. And just, I like to see that truth as like the underlying principles to how everything works. So not to corrupt that or, to corrupt that truth. It's more like, okay, now that we know that truth that you figured out, okay, what can we stack on top of it that can rest on it, that we can, because now we can rely on certain principles. What can we stack on top of it to make it usable without modifying the truth? So that's how I like to see it. It's like I like to stack on top of that and put an infrastructure on top and around it.
What about in terms of like, you're just trying to get something done. You're just trying to get, let's say, the car packed so you can go camping or something like this. Like just trying to get it done. And then, I don't know, maybe you've seen it or witnessed it where someone's like, that's wrong. I can't get on board with this. It's just wrong. It's like, yeah, but it's good enough. Let's move. Let's get moving. I got other stuff to think about.
Yeah, that one project I mentioned, it was a pretty large IT project, and it was just like we were implementing a giant system, and I had a guy on my team. It was just a crack team of 4 people, right? And to do this giant wide scale thing, and they were amazing coders. So, oh my God, thank you. I had them, but one of them just would stop the train every step of the way and saying, that doesn't make sense, or that's not right. I can't be on board with that. Just the way we were trying to T get it done, he was just blocking it the whole way. Just like, hey, no, what about this? What about that? It's like, this is just not making sense. And I'm just like, oh, it was frustrating. It was really hard to get him on board. Great guy. Oh my God. Most pleasant dude in the world, but Jesus, that TI was just a wall, just would not let it go. It was really tough, really tough. So getting him on board was trying to see where he was coming from in his logic, and then kind of saying, okay,
you're responsible to get it to work for everybody, not just
not just for him. Yeah. And it was
not just for him, and not just so that it makes sense, like not just also on a deadline.
Oh God, even worse. Yeah. Deadlines freak me out. So it's just okay. It's like, look, how can I get this to make sense to you, and to show that, hey, this is following your logic, or this does accomplish the goals you want to accomplish too, and get that through their logic, so that way we can keep moving forward. But it's tough though, because I have to do something I'm uncomfortable with, which is, okay, let me follow this chain of logic all the way down. And where are you coming from?
Because you've got to follow the guy to get his idea. You really need to follow his logic.
Yeah.
He's not going to work with you in the logic. You need to follow his logic.
Right. I need to go to him, and I need to ask him.
And then once you finally get it, then you can disagree. Then you can show right.
And it's tough to disagree with again, especially when they're right. It's like like the difficult part of that.
Like, you're not wrong, but
we got to do this anyway, because then I have to bring in, like, even worse, I have to bring in the FE. It'll make everyone feel good if we just move ahead anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a good segue, because we should move on to FE.
Sure.
So, are you aware of the social spectrum of values? What's valuable to people around you? What people care about? I don't know, like a TV show that's on that everyone's watching. Like, are you aware of what's going up and what's going down in social structures?
Not
who's popular.
In the moment, yes, but not like, that's not something I go out and look for. Like, I simply don't care. Which is very FI of me to say. But
also TI doesn't care.
I simply don't care. However, so I grew up with, both my parents are FEs.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I grew up with that, and I think my brother's a TE. And because my brother always got along, we spoke the same language. But my mom probably FESI. My dad, almost is Danny Trejo. So just a SEFE kind of play consume. Just, oh my God. So, and just, I got a lot of awareness through their influence of, hey, people don't like this. Hey, hey, we don't like when you say, I hate this, I hate that. They didn't like intense negative feelings.
It's really hard because it cancels out your FI, which is
right.
And basic, but like, you have to get over yourself in some way.
That was hard. Yeah, that was hard, because I was always, and especially, my parents are immigrants too. So it was like, it's a Hispanic culture as well. So it's like, it was just really tough they're always like, hey, this is bigger than you, or hey, just a lot of messaging of get in line with the values. Hey, be like this, be like that. You should do this, you should do that. A lot of etiquette, a lot of, these are the values, you should follow these values. And it always felt very invalidating. It was, and I resented that for a long, long time. So I had to get over that in my early 20s. I had to get over that and just be like, wow.
Get in touch with your FI somehow. Yeah. What do you actually care about? Not what everyone else cares about.
Yeah. Right. And I had my rebellious time, like every teenager. But for me, it was about asserting what I cared about above whatever the hell they cared about, right? And it was really tough, because it was easy for me with just the play energy, and just, it's easy for me to get validation. It was easy. What worked was to just appease them. And as long as they thought I was listening to what they were saying, it worked just fine, and they let me on, right? But you get a tidal wave of that over time, and it just didn't work for me long term. And I ended up not doing well in school on purpose, even though school was easy. It wasn't hard. It's just that it felt like, hey, I don't care about this, and I want to show you that I don't care, and I don't care about you wanting me to do this, you wanting me to do that, or whatever. It's just because that's all I got all my life. Just, oh my God, an impressive amount of FE. So Yeah, yeah.
No, yeah, it can be overwhelming. The extroverted functions are really overwhelming for introverted ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so like the same way your TE is aware of the spectrum of like I'm accountable to make it work for everybody. Um, FI is like I'm accountable to make myself happy, to make sure I am happy, and FE is more like I'm accountable that like everyone is happy, like my happiness doesn't make other people unhappy, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like I would argue, and this is one of my, one of my growth things that I got to work on is like, even for me, the habit there to make everyone else happy, not just for it working, but to make them happy and to make sure they
Right.
don't feel bad around me is huge. Like the obligation, the felt obligation to do that is huge. Like especially at work or
But
at
at the extent of throwing yourself under the bus, your own happiness and your own desires, right?
right. So a lot of the times I'm left holding the bag of resentment.
Right.
I'm not happy, but everybody else is.
Right.
And again, you get a lot of TE benefits for making everybody else happy. So I'm
Yeah.
aware of what makes people happy. A lot of training, I'm aware what they care about. Again, I don't inquire, but it's one of those things I've learned to be like, okay, pay attention to certain signals of what people care about and what their values are. Don't step on them, make sure you're not impinging here. So I do scan for that. I just out of habit and training. And it's like, again, and again, I do appreciate the FEs. Again, I don't
Yeah.
hate FE. It's not like I mean, maybe
It's just FE is really hard to appreciate.
yeah,
It goes under the radar. Like there's a lot of energy and a lot of work that goes into FE that people don't notice.
yeah. And I worked for FEs, and it's so true. Like some of the best bosses I've ever had were FEs. It's like I love them. They're great.
Right.
But damn it, when they leave behind the logic, oh my god, it's a mess when they don't work on the T side of things.
Right.
It's a mess organizationally speaking.
Yeah.
So it's tough to communicate on their level because I don't speak FE, and it's really like I can do FE isms, I can speak again, I went and NT'd and got some books on okay, how do FEs talk? What when you say this or that must be hard for you, what does that mean to somebody else? Because to me it means nothing, but to them, to other
Oh,
people,
really? Can you tell me
yeah,
about that? How it means nothing to you?
yeah. So like I had to learn how to validate others' emotions and really like if it sounds like you're upset, I had to learn that hey, to say, oh, that must be really hard for you, or you must be really upset, to kind of reflect back an emotion is a valuable thing. And I didn't understand, like if somebody were to do that to me, the thing is like it does work, but it doesn't like what I mean by it doesn't mean anything to me. It's just like if someone didn't do it, I'd be fine either way. Like it's just my emotional experience is my emotional experience, and I don't need you looking after that. Thank you very much. But
Mhm.
but it's nice to get that validation of my emotional experience. But it's one of those where it's like if I don't get it, I'm not going to cry about it. But I had to learn to like give that to others, and that is especially when my TE methods don't work. When I'm making it work for somebody, and it's not the right tool for the job, which
Yeah.
is unfortunately very often, at least in the culture I work in. And so I'm like, okay, so I have to be like, all right, let me build rapport here. Let me tune into their emotional experience. Well, how are they feeling? And it works so well. It's
Yeah.
just, I don't
It sounds like
understand why.
you're still trying to tune into their FI in some way. Like you're still
Some
receptive.
way, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about in terms of like discussing other people, where they fit in, like where the social hierarchy is, who's more important in the group, things like this.
Oh, like politicking, kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't enjoy it, but it is kind of fun, to gossip and stuff like that, So
Okay.
I see it as gossip personally.
Right.
Uh, I don't engage in it if I can help it.
Right. Yeah. Because when FI does it, there's an intention behind it.
Right,
It's
right.
not just to track where things are in relation. There's like I'm putting my intention. I want this guy down. I want this guy up.
Right. Or I want to get in this guy's good graces so I can achieve this objective. So for me,
Right.
I only track it because it's useful, not because I actually care about, who's who, who's what, I don't actually care about that. So
Yeah, and making sure things are, I guess, even social fairness and things like this.
I like I like the. I mean, being TE, I do like the idea of
Yeah.
fairness, and I care a lot about just fairness in general, but social fairness.
Yeah, it's social
Yeah, I see.
fairness. Like this person is hated. Let's try to make him less hated in the group.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I struggle with that because I'm aware of it,
Yeah.
and it depends. It'll be out of guilt that I do it. That I'm like, hey, you're having a hard time. Let me, help them feel like they're accepted too, and stuff like that. That was something that my parents put a lot on me, like to just as a kid. They that was a very deliberate, very specific kind of thing. They'd be like, hey,
What,
think about
like in class?
like in
You see
class and stuff.
someone who's
Right.
who's not doing well socially and help them.
Right, be their friend, and just say hi to them and stuff like that, and kind of
Right.
include them socially. That was
Give
that
them
was
social
really
value in the group.
right, 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 and that was really tough for me to do because especially as a kid, I just didn't get it. I was like, why? I didn't understand. Only as an adult did I get it. I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, this is being left out sucks, and you can do a lot for a person just saying hello or hanging out with them for a little while, and that sort of thing. So to kind of bring some social equity to the equation. Um, but I got a lot of messaging on that early on because I did a lot of babysitting of kids, and like I ended up doing that for like my whole life. So I got a lot. I had to really like just get used to just seeing how groups of people play out and how to make things fair and help a kid feel included in the playground or everything
Yeah.
like that. It was tough. It was tough to learn. It was just a very foreign thing to me. But it's like, again, I have a lot of training in it, but to argue, if I couldn't say that it's a obligation that I have.
When you tune into someone else's emotional experiences, do you try to find your own equivalent to relate
Yes.
to?
Yes. Only until David Chan pointed out that, at least, Benjamin, tell me if this is true. It's like like when I relate to like if someone's having let's say a hard time and I say, and they describe their experience, and then I look immediately for an experience that's either similar or maybe the same as what they had. And then I express that. I didn't realize that actually the FEs in particular don't appreciate that. It's like, stop personalizing my experience.
I think even FI doesn't appreciate that. Yeah, like
Really, I haven't
like
found
yeah.
any FEs. Is that
I
true?
think it's like you're invalidating their experience by
Wow.
like
Really?
making it about you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, because for me, it's like it feels.
I'm a demon feeler completely here. This is all
Yeah.
foreign territory for me. It's all
Yeah.
speculation. It's all theory.
Yeah. Because for me, I really like it when someone feeling understood is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So if you have a similar experience to mine,
I
and you
think
do,
FE likes to do that. Likes to make people feel understood or feel valued or
yeah, they're so good at that. They're so good
yeah.
at that. Like
or
just
feel
valid.
like even they're able to express themselves, like provide the room for them, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. And I'm just not. I've had to learn to let people air out their emotions and just not comment, not try to fix it, not just be there for them.
FI gets attached as well once you start doing that with somebody.
Yeah.
FE can be detached, see it as objective. Okay, yeah, that happened to him. That happened to him.
Yeah.
Also, FE does that. Actually, what you're talking about, it invalidates the FI but FI feels invalidated by FE because it's like, yeah, your situation is bad, but there's children in Africa.
Oh my God, I hate that. Yeah. That is, yeah, I hate that. It's like, yes, I understand.
Like that's what FE kind of does. It invalidates your experience by putting it in on the spectrum, by saying, you're not that bad. Like, sure, your grandfather died, but
yeah, but it makes it objective, and it's like, it's kind of in the spirit of trying to say, hey, look, don't dive down that that feeling hole. It's like, hey, everyone experiences it, everyone suffers, right? And it's
right. Yeah.
And I have a few favorite authors that I like, or the one in particular. I mean, I think he's probably got FE somewhere. You ever heard of Alain de Botton?
No, your consumer's better than
mine. He does. If you look up School of Life, he's got a whole bunch of.
With a K, is that what it is? No.
No, not with a K.
No, okay, never mind.
Yeah, no, not with a K.
It's some other thing.
Yeah, some other thing. School of Life, or look up the Book of Life, and he wrote
Okay.
that. It's just like a lot of FE talk, just equalizing the emotional experience, just saying, hey, look, everyone has very
So
stuff.
Jeffrey's correcting me. He says FE doesn't do that. That's a perversion of FE.
What, invalidating or
The invalidating of the FI. Yeah.
probably? I don't think FE purposely tries to invalidate it. It's more like to an FI, it feels invalidating to be like, because when you're trying to take my emotional experience and just weigh it against all the other emotional experiences that are very similar or the same,
Right.
I'm not interested in that. It's like I'm in this hole and I want to be in this hole, and
Right.
I'm looking for someone to be in this hole with me. So if you're going to share it with me, right? Otherwise, get out,
Right.
and that's it. But
It's also very personal. Like to let someone in is
oh
like
man,
you have to trust them. You have
oh
to.
yes,
Yeah.
trust is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Huge issue.
You're not just gonna let just anyone in.
No, no. And I'm extremely slow to let people in. Extremely slow.
Yeah.
Because it just sucks when it doesn't work out. So, especially being just very masculine FI. So it's like when you're in, you're in, but you know, it sucks when it doesn't, and it hasn't.
All right. So at the risk of being more wrong on FE, let's move on. SI.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, SI. So the sensory, are your experiences personal? Like, I don't know, do you ever, because your wife is SI, right? So you see the sensory being personal to her.
Yeah,
it is it ever personal to you?
Sometimes, like if you look at the all the objects I've got back there, those have a lot of meaning to me. Like that little light back there, that has a whole story by itself at how it even got here. And then she ordered it from Greece, and it's custom made, and it was for Christmas, and it took like 3 months to get here, and because it was shipping delays, and she was hiding it for like 3 months to not tell me, but then she had to tell me because she's like, it got delayed and it's not here yet. But it has a lot of meaning to me, that particular lamp.
Okay, cool.
So
there's meaning behind the physical world a little bit for you.
Yeah, and I've got a lot of little trinkets here that have like either gifts from her and everything that have a lot of meaning to me. There's a ton of them. Or that Frank Lloyd Wright Lego set there, that one on the top of the shelf, that has a lot of meaning to me. That certificate up there, just all that stuff. So I've got a lot of little SI bits in my life that I'm like, yeah.
Just for the sake of correcting myself and being accurate, FE does jump into the hole with you, and that's what we love.
Really? Okay. Huh.
Right. So go figure.
Huh. Okay. Go figure. Go figure.
I need to learn more about FE.
Clearly, we don't understand FE.
Yeah. What about so what about being aware of the history of things, like a continuum? Like for me, this is just a bottle. It's not, there's no meaning behind it, right? But for SI, maybe I guess they're more aware of like the history of things, where stuff comes from, where it's going. I don't know.
Yes. I enjoy history.
Not just specifically, but like something that does have meaning, you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I see that. I see that with my wife. She's not the overly sentimental sort. I mean, let's get that straight.
Right.
But there are things that, she is more into, hey, this is how it came to be kind of thing. And she's more like into that. And for me, if it's relevant to whatever interest I'm trying to narrow down in or whatever NI box I'm in, then I'll thoroughly enjoy the history because I want to see the patterns kind of thing. But as far as a tradition, I've got a problem with traditions. So does she. So it's like, she's not very rigid on traditions either, which is great. We get along a lot that way.
Well, it's feminine, right? Yeah.
Right. So, but we made little traditions of our own, as a couple, as a family, is that sort of thing. So it's really fun to do that. But but not but she doesn't do that often. She doesn't look at a cup and say, hey, this came from this and this came from that or whatever. It's just, she doesn't do that a lot. No, not really. Yeah. She leans a lot more on that TENE kind of side of things.
Do you get attached to like specific things sometimes?
Oh, horribly. Oh my God. Like if I lost any one of those things, I'd be devastated. Jesus Christ. Like I really care about that. Like it's like, if that's a custom made thing and I am terrible at fixing stuff physically. So if that breaks, I'm screwed and that'll be devastating. Like, and I hold on to stuff.
Yeah. What about maybe like fine tuning the physical, like attention to detail, little, I don't know, things like that?
That, um, to boast a little bit here, that I've got a PhD in, for God's sake. That's something I've had to do at work. My job is a SI job, and I've had SI very various bureaucratic slash precise on data slash just very just sequential kind of jobs where precision really matters and sequence really matters.
Uh-huh.
Because I've worked in cybersecurity, I've worked in audit, especially technology audit. So audit is very step by step by step, evidence packaging. You need to show the chain of custody. You need to show the chain of how did you get here, step by step. I've done technical writing. How do you do this, step by step? So I've gotten used to that. So there is for me a huge appreciation of SI, but also it is a merciless tormentor. I mean, it's aggressive how much SI that is just.
Because you have to take into account every possible sequence that can come out of something.
Yes, it's awful. So.
And if you didn't account for one sequence, then.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of so many audits I've been a part of, because the one thing an auditor, you can stereotype your typical auditor as your typical ISTJ, for example, right? So, or ISFJ, either one. And you can't, what they don't like to do is they don't like to guess. So if you're showing how, let's say if I'm showing evidence about how, okay, this is evidence of someone created this user account on this date. If some sensory detail even appears to maybe possibly could be construed as something different and a different conclusion could spawn from that, I have to account and explain for that too, and be ready, because if I don't, they freak out and then they think that, oh, hey, well, this is a risk here. You're not accounting for this. You're trying to hide something, and it's oh man, it's really tough. And not all auditors are like that, obviously, but it's just that's the spirit of the work. It's there to make sure that there's no guessing whatsoever, that everything.
That's another thing I've seen on the opposite side of SI, that SI is responsible for being clear and not misinterpreted.
Right.
They're responsible to, when they say something, that's what it means. You can't think it means something different. It's like definite, certain.
Yes.
And if you misinterpret them, it causes them hardship. It's like, how did I say this too vague? Like they don't want to be vague when they speak. They want to be specific, and
my wife
accountable to that clarity.
100%. She's like that. She just does not like being misinterpreted, and she's.
So then sorry to interrupt. So then, like the inverse is also true. If your words can be interpreted in different ways, that's stressful to them in some way, I guess. Yeah.
It's she does it so much that she's I've made her aware of it, where it's just she's got to be accurate, but sometimes there'll be things that she thinks are self-evident. Like there's another SI thing that I see, at least for her anyway. Maybe it's an energy dominant thing, maybe not, but it's whatever words she uses, to her the conclusions or the possible connections or from that word or set of words is self-evident to her. So she doesn't
want the vagueness, and then also it's about what you don't say sometimes. Oh, you said this and not this. Right. Why did you not say this?
Right. So she's very good at spotting, she's got a BS meter the size of Texas. I mean, it's just that she can, whatever you're not saying, she'll find you. So she'll find out. She's very in tune with, hey, something's wrong here. You're not. But yeah.
What are you hiding?
What are you hiding? Right. You can't hide anything.
Why are you hiding something there?
Right. And she's very confident about what you're hiding. And the problem is that she's right. That's the thing. So it's just like, and it's not because I'm her husband or whatever. It's just that she actually is right. Like she's really scarily good at guessing. And she's trained that and relied on that really well. So it just.
Yeah, she's doing the double observing too.
Yeah. That's the worst part.
She makes sure it's all lined up properly. Yeah.
I know. I wish I had the double observing, but I get the double deciding. So it works out. Yeah,
we're getting a little bit long at the moment. But we can get through some of this stuff. Do the objects themselves have meaning, or do they serve more as a trigger to something internally? That I personally can't answer. I don't know how I say.
That would be it would be the latter. So they trigger something internally. But it's hard for me, let's say, to, again, I'm not the SI type here, but it's
they don't have an objective meaning. They have a subjective meaning.
Right. That's it. It's hard for me to clean slice them separately and say, object versus the meaning. It's like, to me, they come in the same package.
But it's
There's no one without the other.
behind the object. Like
Yeah.
you could point at there's objects on the shelf. Maybe they have objective meaning. Well, they do have a subjective meaning to you too. Yeah.
They do. Yeah, they do. But like, I wouldn't, for me,
By
Like,
meaning, at least.
yeah, it just comes with the meaning. So it's very hard for me to like look at just items. Even though I've got SE, it's hard for me to just look at everything I have around me as purely just objective. Yeah, whatever. I could trade this one out for another one.
Well, okay, so that's another thing. Like, SE and I doesn't mind getting more and more details because it's like, okay, I got another like
Yes.
it gets boring, but like, okay, this other detail, yep, fits in the same box, fits in
Yeah.
the same box. Oh, this one has a little difference. That's good. That'll allow me to define my boundaries a little bit more accurately, right? So
Yeah.
SE is like, okay, it's just a detail. It's just a detail. Oh, that detail might just be wrong. We can throw that away, right? It's not very personal. It's objective. These details.
Right.
Where like SI, each detail has more meaning behind it. There's more significance, and an over quantity of it gets confusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that happens a lot in conversation with my wife. So when I tell a story to her about what happened in my day or anything, right? When I'm relaying information, I always start with the SE and I'm just throwing, facts, because to me, they're all relevant to the central concept I'm building up to.
Mm-hmm.
But to her, the way we've learned to communicate with each other is like, I've got to give her the conclusion so that way she can take that as an SI data point to hold on to then form her own conclusions about that. Because otherwise, when I give her tons of SE, she's like, I don't know how all of this fits. There's too many different possibilities.
Yeah, that's
She's
true.
like, stop,
Yeah, one solid data point can mean so many different things. Right.
So she treats the conclusion I give her as, okay, this is a data point I can rest on. Now I can follow how all the details you're going to give me connect together.
No, because like every single detail you give gets overwhelming because it has so many different connections. So like, hey, you're giving me too many details. Like they're connecting too much.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Like almost every day. So she will explain it in those terms. She's like, hey, she will, and it's really great that she's got masculine TE. So she'll be like, hey, stop. It's too many details. I can't follow you. She'll be like, what's the point? Like, please,
Right.
Can you give me the point?
Whereas when I hear them, it sounds like they're giving too many details, the SI, but it's not too many because it's like all the same detail. It's just like it's one long detail rather than many details. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm thinking about that. I'm trying to think of an example. Because the confusion I have with her, I don't have a specific example for that. Because the confusion I have when she communicates a point is like, I don't even know how the hell you arrived at that. So I can't follow the NE connections to, like there's no NI. There's nothing for me to follow. So, and that could just be, again, she's really economical with words. So it's just like, she doesn't want to explain more than she has to. Which is really funny.
That's another thing. They could start with one sensory and then just extrapolate intuitively from that sensory point. And it's like, where did you end up? What?
How did you even get there? Like how, or when she gives advice, it's like, it's great advice, but I don't know how you got there.
And even though they do get there, for them, it's meaningless. It's like, we could just throw it out. It doesn't matter to me because it's not personal.
Yeah.
But for you, it's like, oh, you got there. That must mean something. It's like, no, that's just another one. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. That is exactly my experience. Because she'll be like, hey, here's this great piece of advice for some problem you're having. And I'll be like, oh my God. Well, first I'll be confused. I don't know how I got there. But then when I get it, I'll be like, this is amazing. Where was this 3 months ago? She'll be like, whatever. It's just another one. I've got a million of these. It's just, It's that kind of casualness. It's not personal at all. It's just like, yeah, whatever. I just thought of that just now. I'm like,
okay, let's
gotta wrap it up.
let's quickly get to all of this stuff. Sorry, man. FE can avoid FI like walking on eggshell. I don't know what that means, but this Jeffrey says that sounds like a nightmare.
It's more, tell you what, like love makes it work, right? Because it's like, right. I didn't know what the communication problems were. Like it took both of us getting typed. Again, we get along.
You have the masculine FI, right? So
yeah, that too. So yeah, it's and she's got feminine FI, so that really helps with getting along. Feminine TE, masculine TE, but where we had crosstalk was the observers. It was just sometimes we would just we would talk past each other. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
It would lead to like just small like, but what do you think I mean? It's like, oh, you think you mean this, or no? It's like, no, I think you mean this. And it would get into these weird masculine intuition arguments about both of us guessing what the other meant. And it just wasn't connecting.
So if I remember, FM, TE, SI, and I don't know the animals.
Blast, play, sleep, consume.
Last place, sleep, consume.
So think Kristen Leo, same type.
I don't even know who that is.
She was an early class one. Like if you go back in the archives, it's there. It's a very early class. It was like one of the first like 15.
Cool, man.
So, yeah.
Anyway, Bryan, man, and really, really nice talking to you. If you haven't checked out Bryan's first interview, it's one of my favorites. Really well done. Yeah. Anyways, thank you for tuning in, everybody, and have a good one.
Thanks.
Peace.
See ya.